On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Layza. And Layza was in a 30-year abusive marriage to a raging narcissist. And to make matters even worse, one of her adult children has become just as abusive toward her in the aftermath. It's a story about young love, feeling trapped, parental alienation, and getting in touch with your spirituality to help you heal. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of narcissistic abuse. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning in to this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get into our episode with Layza, I just wanted to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. A big shout out to all of our friends in our Narcissist Apocalypse Facebook support group for just being a great group of people. Also, a reminder, if you haven't left us a review, please do leave us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., etc. Leaving us a 5-star review helps the show out when it comes to rankings. Now, if you want to be part of our show, please go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Go to the guest form button, press it, fill out the form, and we will go from there. However, the quickest way to be part of our show is to also go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com, and it's for our Read a Letter to Your Narcissist compilation episode. While there's a button that says Send Voicemail. You can record up to 5 minutes. Read your letter through that voicemail, or if you don't want to read your letter yourself, send me your letter at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com. Myself or my old pal Melissa will read it on that episode. Also, our new podcast, Narcissist Apocalypse Q&A, is now available for your listening pleasure. Yes, that is right. 3 episodes have been released so far. A 4th is on the way this week. Last week, we interviewed Claudia, Sinai, Mosias, and we discussed the narcissist authentic self versus the false self. It was a great episode. We deep dove into my own insecurities. I was a guinea pig for the episode. It was a great episode. So thank you for Claudia for being part of it. She is also part of our therapist directory at abusetherapy.org. Yes, that is right, abusetherapy.org. If you are looking for a coach or a therapist, go to abusetherapy.org and find a therapist or a coach there. And if you do so, it helps support the show by using the therapists and the coaches that are on there. If you need help with your narcissistic abuse recovery, your healing process, please go to abusetherapy.org. Last thing, you know what else supports the show? We have a Patreon. That is right. We have a Patreon now, everyone. Behind-the-scenes stuff on the show. Episodes that have never made it to air for various reasons. Usually because they're too short to be on the main podcast. Also, we're going to have interviews up there with former guests. We're going to do some catch-up episodes. We might even do some movie watch-along episodes. More special type of episodes are going to be on there for people that join our Patreon and support the show. You can find that at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. That is patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. Go there, sign up, support the show. Extra content for everyone who can't get enough of what we already have. Because I know there are a bunch of you out there that have asked, have said, I'd listen to a show every day if I could. So here we're going to have the ones that don't make it to air and some extra stuff, some follow-up stuff. I'm now just repeating myself because I'm rambling and I should just get out of my own way. That's right, everyone. I'm going to do that right now. Here is my conversation with Layza. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. With me today, I have Layza. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
And you were in a 30-year abusive marriage to someone with narcissistic personality disorder. And I am just going to get out of your way and let you tell your story. So thank you once again for sharing with us today.
Thank you. Like I said, it's been 30 years of marriage, and I met him when I was 16. We lived in the United States. My parents were military. His stepfather was retired military, but was a local to this place. And I met him through a friend. And when I first met him, I couldn't stand him. I thought he was obnoxious. I thought he was arrogant. I thought he was an ass. And he left for training. He went into the military, and he came back. And he and I started dating. And but at first it was just casual dating. He just comes to pick up me from work. Very sweet, very kind. Did small things for me that I thought were just so great being young. He's only a couple years older than me, but he was in college, and I was still in high school. We started making it a couple on New Year's Eve. And right after that, things started going downhill very quickly. The fights, the arguments, the gaslighting. But I was so young and naive, I didn't know what that was. Even though I'd seen it before.
During this was before you guys, so you guys became official pretty early, correct?
Yes. We've been friends a couple of years.
So before that, were you, like, was there love bombing going on? How did he kind of build your trust? Was there mirroring of your stuff?
Yeah, he always encouraged me to be myself. I was too pretty for these guys I was dating. I shouldn't be treated so poorly, even though I wasn't really being treated poorly. And come on, we're in high school. So it wasn't like I was being treated horribly. But, it was, you deserve better, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that, you're smart. And that ended pretty quickly with him.
So how old are you right here? You're like 18 years old?
17.
Oh, so you're 17. Okay.
Now I'm 17.
Okay.
And we date for 4 months. But during this time, things were happening like these explosive fights. And we broke up on and off constantly. And there was these volatile fights I've never experienced in my life. I was so confused by it, I assumed I was the problem. But looking back, I realized I wasn't. The fights, one was over, I had a beer. I lived in an area, the drinking age was 18. My parents didn't care if I drank beer at home. He could tell I was drinking something over the phone, and he says, "What are you drinking?" And this time, he did not drink. He was very anti-drinking because his father was an alcoholic who no longer lived with him. And I said, "I'm drinking a beer. Big deal. I mean, that's just kind of who I am. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, like it or not." And it caused a huge fight. We broke up. We got back together. These fights happened all the time. They became physical. And I'm not going to lie and say I didn't retaliate and hit him back, because I did. Young and dumb. I stood up for myself. I wasn't going to let some man hit me in the face or grab me by the throat. I was going to hit you back. And
so you're 17 here. Are you telling anyone that this is going on at that age, or no?
No, I didn't know this was abnormal. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds crazy because I knew it was wrong. I grew up in a very stable family in the sense I was with my grandparents all the time who had this loving, compassionate relationship. And I never saw them strike each other, call each other names. I just thought this is his personality, or there's something inherently wrong with me. And I think he, at one point, even made me believe it was me, that I'm too strong and too independent. I don't know if those words were actually said, but that's what I started believing about myself. And these fights would happen, and there was a time when we had broke up, and I was going to prom with another boy. We were broke up, and this boy and I in high school didn't know each other very well. We decided to go to prom together. Well, he found out about it, and he's trying to get me back very hard. And I agreed to meet him, and he's like, "Well, I'll go to prom with you." I'm like, "No, I'm not breaking my date with this guy. Doesn't mean he and I are going to date. We're just going to prom together. It's not a big deal." And I'm a junior in high school at this point. And it escalated. He held me down in a park on base to the point I said, if you don't let me go, I'm going to bite you, because my hands and my legs are, he's sitting on me, and he's got my arms above my head on the ground. And I said, I'm going to bite you because I'm going to get you off of me. This is not okay. And I did. The cops were called because a group of people walked by and they thought he was sexually assaulting me, which he was not. And no charges were pulled against me. They said it was completely self-defense. And that should have been my big da moment. And he did have bite marks on where I bit him in the chest, because that was the only way I was trying to get him off of me. And like I said, that should have been my da moment where I said goodbye. But a few days later, he starts calling me and devaluing the situation, saying it wasn't that bad. It wasn't. I was just trying to get through your head that I love you and I want to be with you. And for some reason, I just assumed this again was normal. He was just trying to tell me what he loved me. Well, my parents weren't very happy about this. And mind you, at this point, I just turned 18. And I moved out. I moved in with his parents and him, and we got married. Now, mind you, we'd only been dating for 4 months, and we had an 11-day engagement. So things went really quick with him.
Your parents must have been beside themselves, I assume, because
my mother had to go. My mother went into therapy.
Yeah,
it upset my parents tremendously.
Because you went from the police being called to getting married within how long? Like 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
3 or 4 weeks, yeah. If that. Like I said, I had an 11-day engagement, and I basically got engaged right a couple days after I moved out of the house.
So when you probably tried to justify what was going on to them, how did you explain that to them?
I don't remember. I know I invited them to our wedding, and they didn't show up. I knew that my mother was completely distraught. And at this point, my mom did go to therapy, and she was explaining to the therapist everything that was going on. And this is the late 80s. So there wasn't a lot of this narcissist or anything like that. He just says, what you're telling me, this is the therapist to my mother, is it sounds like he might be a sociopath. Because back then, that's kind of how the terms were. It's either you were normal or a sociopath. There wasn't all the in-between.
And did this isolate you from your family right here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And during this time, my parents got their orders to leave. And so I knew within 6 months they would be gone. And I'd be isolated on a small island in the middle of nowhere. And parts of me were terrified. And during this time, he and I are still having these explosive fights. And I am not a fighter. Even though I'm strong and independent, I have to be pushed really hard to fight back. I am rational, and I'll say, I need 5 minutes to think about this. I don't agree with what you said. Let me think about this for a minute before I give you an answer. And through all this, like I said, we're having these explosive fights, stupid fights. Like we were playing Monopoly. I caught him cheating in Monopoly, and he threw the board game at me. I'm like, you're calling me an effing cheater, and I'm not a cheater. Well, I just criticized his character. I didn't know that then. I just thought he was being a young boy, a young man, and I, somehow fractured his little ego. Well, I never wanted to have children. Not that kids are bad or I wouldn't be a good mom. It just, I had so many dreams and aspirations to be something more than my mother was. And not that she was a horrible parent or didn't do great in life. It's just, I wanted to be more. And I popped up pregnant and with my oldest son. And I was devastated at first because I thought, I'm 18 years old. I'm still in high school. Who wants to be a mom in high school? Because I was going into my senior year. And so through all that, he would start saying things like, this ain't my baby because I can't, I'm infertile. Stupid little comments like this that would just kind of put this doubt that I'm out doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. And I'm just looking at him like, are you crazy? I mean, I'm already upset. Why are you telling me these things? Even through my entire pregnancy, these fights continued. And a lot of times I start having contractions and things like that. And he'd say, this is your fault. If you would stop and just be rational, this wouldn't be going on. I have my son, and I went into instant postpartum depression. And
do you have any support from friends during this time, or are you completely isolated?
I had friends, but they were only at school friends.
Okay.
I'd actually moved school. I went to his old high school through all this because it was closer, because we moved out on our own. And I decided I was going to call my parents and leave. And at this point, he gets a hold of his mother. And, it's a big fight. She's a lot like him. And she says, you're not taking that baby over my dead body. Well, now I'm very isolated because I'm not abandoning my child. And I finally get to the point where I need to leave this location. I need to come back to the States because I needed more support. And things got better for a while. And I thought, well, things are good. He's finally seeing the light. I'm not crazy. He was going through a bad moment, whatever. And within a year, I'm pregnant again with my second son. But during this time, we do move back to the States. And things had calmed down a bit. There's still the names calling me a fucking bitch, a whore, things like that. We still had these fights where I was like, where did this come from? And, he'd throw things across the room and then tell me he's not going to clean it up as soon as we were having guests or whatever. But his schedule, he was in school. His schedule, he went to school at night and he slept during the day. So I didn't really have to deal with him too much. And I have my second son. Things are still not horrible, but not good. There's still the gaslighting, the arguments, telling me that I'm the crazy one. And I decided I didn't want more children. I tried leaving. He used kids against me. I decided no more kids because this is only going to make the problem worse. Quit adding children to this. And before I knew it, I'm pregnant with child number 3. And you want to talk about devastated. So I had a lot of complications in my third pregnancy. You have to think 3 kids in 3 years takes a toll on a woman's body, even though that's what we're designed for. But and being young, I had a baby at 19, 20, and then I was 21 when I had my third. And I was on bed rest, and there's still the fights. And they called a family member over from overseas to come and take care of me because I couldn't take care of my 2 children while he was at work. And like I said, these fights are still going on. They get explosive. At the end of this pregnancy, in my 8th month, or 7.5 months, we get into an argument. And he looked at me and says, you're just a leeching whore. All women are leeching whores. And, of course, me being me, and I said, well, wait till I tell your mother she's a leeching whore. I mean, you're insulting me, and it came out of my mouth. He threw me on the bed and tried to drag me back off it by my ankles, and I'm fighting him. And the whole time, he's still trying to grab me. He's grabbing me by the arms. I mean, I have bruises all up and down my legs and my arms. And he realizes he's not going to get me out of the house. He's trying to kick me out of the house, saying this is his house. I'll follow his rules. He jumps on me, and he's straddling me. So he's sitting on my belly, and he has my arm down at first, and he's in my face, and he lets my arms go, and he puts his hands around my throat. And at this time, he's held my throat for quite a while, and I can't breathe. And I start going limp. At that point, he let go. Well, I'm up all night now because I'm now in labor again because I've been in labor for 4 months on and off. And I'm trying to take the medication to stop the labor. And he goes on to bed like nothing ever happened. And it's my fault. If I hadn't said what I'd said, he wouldn't have had to do that to me. But the next morning, he gets up and goes to work, and he says, don't you dare call me and tell me you're in labor. I don't care if you're hemorrhaging to death. And I'm thinking, what a thing to say to a woman who's carrying your child. Well, of course, I am in labor, and it doesn't stop, and I end up having my son, and he was born with a rare birth defect, because I thought, as soon as this baby's born, I'm out of here. Well, I couldn't leave. My son's in the NICU. He's fighting for his life, and is rushed into emergency surgery and all that. So we're dealing with all this. My son does recover from it, comes home. He's only home for a few weeks and is rushed back into emergency surgery, and he nearly died because he had a bowel obstruction that actually caused him to have sepsis. So he's, fever and throwing up bile, and it was a nightmare. And my ex looks at me and says, "That kid ain't mine." And I said, "Why would you say that?" He says, "He ain't mine. He don't look like the others." Now, my ex and I look very different. I'm dark-haired, dark-eyed. He's blonde and blue-eyed. This particular child was born with dark, black, curly hair like I was when I was born. I'm like, there's two parents. Just because the other two were born blonde doesn't mean this isn't your kid. I mean, come on, I have some genetics there. So I said, that's fine. You can think that. Let's go ahead and do a DNA test. In the military, I knew that I'd get child support no matter what. And I said, but when we do this DNA test and it comes back, I will be leaving regardless of what the test says. I'm not going to be treated this way. He refused it. And then later he started accusing me, because I was in the hospital all the time with my son, that I was having affairs with the doctors. Come on, I'm a 21-year-old woman with 3 kids. Come on. It was ludicrous.
So you're 21 years old right now, correct?
I'm 21.
So you're 21. Yes. Well, not right now, but at the time you're 21, and you have 3 children.
Yes.
In your mind right here, you're trying to get out of this life. And there's a lot of people out there who are probably listening who struggle with getting out of these types of relationships, and you struggled for another 27 years to do that. So, how many times, I don't know if I'm going too much forward in your story, but how many times did you try to leave, and was this like a thing every month, like week? And did you try to go to the military for help at all, or am I just jumping too far ahead right now?
I had at one point, we had a blow up fight where he pushed, this is before my third son was born, and I was holding my infant son, my middle one, in my arms, and he pushed me from one end of the house to the other, and I kicked him out. The military put him in to the barracks and requested that we go to therapy. Well, we didn't go through a true therapist. We went to a minister. And I loved him. He was a great guy. But he wasn't geared for what we needed. And so relentlessly I let him back. The one thing about my ex, he was great about taking care of me financially. There was always more money than we needed. We got to do fun things. The kids always had clothes on their back, food in their belly. I never worried about those things. But, yes, I tried leaving multiple times. And I would say it would vary. Sometimes it would be once a week, sometimes as much as far apart as 6 months. It depended on his behavior. And he'd always excuse his behaviors, that he hated the military and he hated his job. And he was doing this for us. So that I got guilted. And, of course, I had a sick son. And his medical expenses would have been horrendous in the real world. The military was covering all of his medical expenses. By the time he was 3, he'd been in intensive care something like 15 times and hospitalized like 36. We moved out of country because his orders sent us out of country. And we got a compassionate reassignment back because of my son's health. And I thought, okay, now that we're getting some help for my son, maybe things will get better. I always held out hope that things would get better after the next crisis. Things did not get better.
And are you still suffering at that time from postpartum depression?
Probably so. Dealing with a sick child, you kind of put that on the back burner because I think it goes back to the taking care of your child who's sick. You don't care about anything else. You know, all you worry about is taking care of that child. And taking care of the other two is the best you can and trying to keep normalcy with them.
And how did your husband treat them?
He was very hard on them. He was always a strict father. I wouldn't say he didn't show love. I believe full-heartedly he loved them in the best that he could, but he was always very strict with them. I was always, you know, if I disciplined, I'd say, tell me why you did this. What's going on with you, with the kids? What's going on with you so I can understand why you behave this way? He was just a lawmaker. Like, nope, this is how it is. Everything to him is very black and white. I kind of see things in gray. He's black and white.
Were they scared of him in any way?
Yeah, they were. Absolutely. And especially as they got older, they come to me and not him with problems. And during all this time, our middle one started having behavioral problems. And I begged my ex to take him to see a therapist or a doctor or someone. He was reluctant. He just would say, I'm a shitty mom. I'm not hard enough on him. I needed to, lay down the law. And the kids knew my boundaries. They knew my rules. They didn't give me a lot of help, except the middle one. And over time, they were getting older. They were in school. School started having problems with this particular one. And he finally agreed to let me take him to a doctor because he thought he was on drugs. Well, I think he was dabbling. I'm not going to deny that because he's almost now a teenager. But we found he was diagnosed bipolar. And once he got on bipolar medication, things leveled off. But there were still explosive fights between my ex and I, constantly accusing me of cheating.
So you're going through this. You don't really have a support system at all. As far as hopelessness goes, did you see at all? At a certain point, you were trying to get out, and then then at a certain point, I assume that you start believing that there is no way out.
Yeah, for years I believed that. I suffer from OCD. I've had OCD since a child because I don't deal with anxiety well. I was a cutter when I was younger, and I would start cutting. It was only really the relief I had from it kind of transfers that emotional pain to physical pain, so I could kind of let it go. Because, like I said, it was like a roller coaster ride with him. You never knew from day to day what person you were going to get. And I was just surviving. I wasn't living, for sure.
And you were now far away from this, this reminds me of the song Red Dirt Girl by Emmylou Harris. Do you know that song?
I've heard it. I don't know it well, but I've heard it.
Yeah. And, someone that had all these dreams, and then she married a guy, had, a few children, and all of a sudden she never got out of Alabama, where she had all these plans to go everywhere she wanted to go. The difference between you and this person is that you're in this army world, so you are, I guess, moving around a little, but
well,
you're not living your life.
Military.
Sorry?
Yeah. At this point he had gotten out, and we'd moved to where we live presently.
Okay.
So, because he hated the military so bad, and I guess I skipped that. I apologize. We had gotten out of the military. My son's medical condition stabilized, and he was able to get out. And we moved closer to his family because they had some really the world's best hospitals in this area. And so if I needed to take my son there, we could. But still, that's his family. It wasn't my family. I couldn't go and talk to his family about his issues because his whole family, I hate to say this, I don't know if you've seen the movie Deliverance, that his family is set up much like this clan in Deliverance. They can all treat each other like crap, but don't let anyone who is not blood retaliate because you will pay the wrath. And I knew that. I knew without a shadow of a doubt if I did anything to retaliate, I'd pay for it. And it kept me hostage. It kept me a hostage in my own, family. And so it was a very stressful situation. I had nowhere to go. My family at this point was on the other coast. I didn't tell them everything going on. I didn't want their sympathy, but yet I was ashamed.
Were you afraid that if you told them they would do an I told you so?
Yes, maybe. That and, a lot of times he'll say, I'm leaving, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This isn't healthy. This is toxic. He'd make excuses. And when he realized the excuses weren't working any longer for me, he would tell me he would not pay me child support. He'd leave the country and go back home and quit his job. They couldn't get, blood from a turnip. And I think looking back, he held me hostage financially, to be honest. And I knew I had this mentally child that I didn't think I could take care of on my own, or so I was led to believe. But like I said, we kind of went through good times and bad times. We went through the honeymoon periods, and things were great. And as the kids got older, things were a little bit better because the kids weren't as much of a stress. Money was a little better. We were both working now. I opened my own business. He was working a stable job that he seemed to enjoy.
So as far as opening your own business, is that something that was encouraged, or something you said to yourself, I need to do this once I am able to, I don't have to stay home with the children as much anymore. I need to start creating a life for myself outside the home?
I wouldn't say he ever encouraged it. He never wanted me to make it larger, He didn't mind that I was working. He never minded that I was working. But he never encouraged me to grow up to be extremely successful. He just liked that I was contributing financially. He never encouraged it. Mm-hmm. So it did start growing. It became where I could have taken care of myself. And I decided I was going to leave. Now, mind you, a lot of times happened. A lot of things have happened in between. My now children are high school age or older. And I'm just like, I've had enough. I'm tired of feeling the way I feel. I hate coming home. I hate when his car pulls in the driveway. I hate it. At this point, he had started drinking. And we went out one night, and I had drank a little bit more than he did. And all the way home, he screamed at me. What a bitch I was. Men were looking at me. Why do I have to dress up and have men look at me? I got home, got in the shower, and he sat in the bathroom screaming at me and telling me I was a shitty mother. He's ashamed of me. And at this point, I'm like, I've got to get out of here. He bribed my children. They all wanted to live with me. He bribed them and said that if you move with your mother, you're not going to have the nice things you have now, like motorcycles and things like this. Because the kids, like I said, more money was being made. The kids got more things. And one by one, they came into my bedroom and said, we're going to live with Dad, because he bought them off. But all through the years, they all said, Mom, just leave. Mom, just leave. Mom, just leave. And easier said than done. At this point, it got to a real low, and we went into marriage counseling. And not that I disliked our counselor. I just don't think he really saw the big picture, because I kept my mouth shut a lot. And we were in therapy 5 minutes, and he looks right at my ex and says, I don't know you, but what I hear out of your mouth makes you sound like an asshole. No wonder why she wants to leave you. And, of course, I couldn't help but hide. I mean, I'm trying not to grin, because I'm like, finally, someone sees what I see.
Yes.
Even though, looking back, they just didn't say anything because he was my husband. We went through therapy, and things got better for a while. And I say a while, he thinks it's like 4 or 5 years. And we had good times and bad times, so they just weren't as explosive. He kept it under check a little more. But there was something always off. It was never right. I still walked on eggshells. I still worried about what I said. I still didn't want to come home. I still didn't want to see him.
You're living under fear, obligation, and guilt. Every emotion, everything you're doing, everything you say, everything you do, it is, you're being controlled in some way. Even if he's not saying anything, you're self-controlling.
Absolutely. I got to be a master of going out in public and putting on a smile and hiding tears and puffy eyes and just saying things are great. We're a great family. We're great. And the whole time I'm thinking, I think I hate him. And I don't hate anybody. So hate's a very strong word for me. But what I started feeling for him was total disgust. And then I started thinking, am I disgusted in him or am I disgusted in myself? Probably both. And I'm kind of rushing through some of this to get to the present, because the present is probably the most impacted. So like I said, we went through marriage counseling, things got better, and things started kind of falling apart again. And we go into a concert. We did a lot of things together. As long as I could keep him out in public, things were good. He wasn't going to show his real self in front of everybody. Let me back up for a minute, because this is important, I guess. He didn't just have this behavior with me. He did it within his own family. He had falling out with one of his brothers, and who lived local. And he shows up at his house one evening, and they get into a verbal argument. And my ex looks at his brother and says, "Do you want to die tonight, motherfucker?" Well, my brother-in-law goes into his house and calls his son-in-law, who is a deputy sheriff. Well, I didn't know any of this was happening. None of it. Because I wasn't there. I was at home. And one of our sons gets called, and he shows up at the house like, "Where's Dad?" I'm like, "I don't know. He was supposed to be home a while ago. I don't know. It's probably out with the guys. I don't know." It was just something he was allowed to do, but I wasn't. He could go out with the guys, but I couldn't go out with the girls. And finally, my son tells me, "Well, my uncle just called and said this has happened." I'm like, "What? What?" Because they want to know where the guns are. We own firearms. So I go looking for them. They're all in the home. I'm like, okay, everything's fine. He didn't have a gun. Okay, great. About this time, my ex rolls in, and I say, "What has happened? What have you done? You don't understand. The police are coming to our house." And he said, "I didn't do anything. Well, the police show up, and he takes off out the back door. It's early March. It's like 15 degrees out. He doesn't have a coat on. He doesn't have shoes on. He's hiding out in the woods for an hour. Finally, he comes back because he's actually developing frostbite. And the police bring him in so he can warm up. They take him to another part of the house. They interrogate him. And one of the police officers comes to me and says, "I recommend that you go down to the county office and go to the magistrate's office and have him committed."
Oh, wow.
And I'm looking, I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. And, of course, this son of ours is like, "Mom, don't do it. Because at this point, they almost look at him like a pity party story. It's like, almost like they can relate to him to some degree. I'm not saying all of them, but a few of them. And I say, "How long do I have to decide this?" And he says, "You have 24 hours. You're the only person who can have him committed because you're his wife." I said, "All right." Of course, now I'm getting talked down by my son. I'm getting talked down by him because the police have left, though they made us surrender all of our guns.
Have they explained to you what happened yet?
No.
And then they're just asking you, do you want him committed?
Yes. And I'm like sitting there going, I really have no clue what has happened. No one has informed me of what's happened. The police leave. My son leaves with the guns to take him out of the house. And I'm sitting there like, "You need to talk to me and tell me what's happened." And, of course, it's all the other person's fault. I'm not at fault. That's a story. That's BS. The next day, he does kind of slip up and tell me, "Yeah, I kind of told I wish he was dead. I told my brother this. I told him that." Come to find out, that's not how it really went down. And of course, I'm sitting there kind of like blindsided going, "What?" This is insanity. Who gets the police called on you for, what is going on? But so his behavior did slip with other people in the family, is my point. And we were in the car coming back from this concert, and I said, hey, and I had a few beers in me. We both at this point had been drinking. We're drinking again. I won't say excessively, but I was at a concert, had a few beers. Taco Bell had these really great fries out. Everyone talked about that I had never tried. And I said, hey, going through the Taco Bell drive-thru on the way back so I can try these fries. And that was a fight. And he slams on the brakes, and we're in a very bad neighborhood where there's a lot of drug activity, prostitution. It's a bad neighborhood. He slams on the brakes, and he says, shut the fuck up or get the fuck out of my car. Well, at this point, I'm like, your behavior's starting to slip, and I am not going back to this. So I get out of the car. Not a wise decision, but I thought I'm going to take my chances out here than in the car. And I start walking down the road, and he's now circling around 100 times and begging me to get back in the car. I'm like, no. I'm not going to be treated this way over stupid fries. Really? This is ridiculous. And he kept on and kept on. Well, he comes around again, and he says, if you don't get in this car, I'm going to kill myself. I've heard now through the years this multiple times. Snapped. And I said, you go do you. Do whatever you got to. Quit using this as a vice for me. You're thinking that you're going to get your way by threatening your life.
Did you used to fall for something like that, and then all of a sudden, yes. Over time, you're like, yes. He's never going to do it? Yes.
And see, he knew at this point, suicide runs kind of, I won't say rampant in my family, but I have 3 family members who have committed suicide. One was a grandmother, my father's mother, my half-sister, who is my father's other daughter, and I've had an uncle. I don't do well with this threat. To me, it's BS. It's a childish act of threatening it when you're not getting your way. It's a little boy or child having a temper tantrum, and I'm going to hold my breath. And maybe that's not a healthy way of looking at it, but that's just kind of how I've gotten with it when people threaten to me, because I have lost people to suicide, and it's a horrendous emotional roller coaster with that. So for me, the threat, it just pushes me into kind of a hypervigilant. You don't get pity from me, I guess, is my point. Mm-hmm. I did get back in the car. We went back to my son's house. By the way, my son was with me, and his wife. And we go back there, and I don't even know how to even, handle the situation. I think I felt like I was in an insane asylum at this point. Later the next morning, we go back home, and, of course, he wants to fight about it, and he doesn't want to fight about what he has said or done. It was me not responding to him the way he thought I should respond. It was everything I had said after he pushed and pushed and pushed. And, of course, me being me, I apologized to just put a Band-Aid over it. And things were okay for a while, for a short while. Well, we met up with a friend of mine for dinner and drinks, and he was in a mood because he doesn't like her. But he finally said, I will start hanging out with your friends. I'll start trying to make an effort. We met her and her boyfriend for dinner, and you could tell right away he had an attitude. And as the night progressed, he started drinking more and more. And it got to the point where he grabbed me by the face, very hard. And I pulled away. And believe it or not, even then, I didn't think this was odd behavior because it became a normalcy. And my friend saw it, and she jumped up, and he grabbed my face again, and she got between us. And she was face to face. I'm not going to touch her like this. This is not okay. At this point, her boyfriend takes him outside, and he is now threatening to kill me. He's going to kill me. I'm a whore. I must be fucking someone because, I always wear the makeup. I always do my hair. I always this. I always that. I didn't know this conversation had happened. I didn't know what happened outside. Well, the next day, or 2 days later, because my friend waited for me to go to work, and she called me. I want you to know what was said. And I was like, okay. And she told me what was said outside because her boyfriend had told her. And I thought, this is it. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. He's going to kill me. He's threatened me too many times that he actually might kill me. I was so devalued to this point. And this is, I guess, where it gets really sensitive. And this is still really hard for me. I took the gun out of the drawer. Actually, I was moving it. We put it away in a different drawer because we had family guests there and stuff. We didn't want the gun in an easy access area. And at this point, the guests had left, and I was moving the gun. And I sat on that gun for an hour, and I held that gun to my face. And it'll be a moment I'll never forget. And I thought, if that man walks through this door right now, I may kill him. And it scared me. It scared me to a point that I realized I've got to do something.
So how does it end?
Well, he asked me to go to marriage counseling. So we do. I thought, great, finally we're going somewhere with this. And about 3 sessions in, and him admitting doing all these things, our therapist says, I'd like to meet with you two separately. I'd like to talk about your childhood. So my ex goes first, and apparently that's what they did talk about, is their childhood, his childhood. And I go in for my session, and my therapist says, I don't need to know about your childhood. You've already talked about it in session. He says, I want to know what your plan is. I said, what are you talking about? He says, what do you plan on doing? I said, I'm still not sure of the question, because I'm not going to divulge information that I'm not, I'm very weary about this. He says, this is a private conversation. This will never leave you and I. He says, are you wanting to work this out, or are you wanting to leave? And I said, I want to leave. He says, why haven't you? I said, because I'm trapped. I'm trapped financially. I'm trapped for medical insurance. I'm trapped. He says, well, if you want out, I'll give you the resources to get out. I'll help you. He says, this is a narcissist. He's also a covert and an overt narcissist. He says, this man is dangerous. He will kill you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's not if, it's when. He will kill you. So I'm sitting here, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, And at this point now, I can't see my therapist to make the next plans because it's Christmas. And my ex's birthday is Christmas. So we go to our son's house, and the party was not revolving all about him because it's also Christmas, and he's making snide remarks to me. He takes off and pouts. He gets me, we finally leave early, and on the way home, he's screaming at me, and I start cutting even heavier. And I thought, this has got to stop. This has got to stop. I'm either going to take my own life, or he's going to kill me. And I have too much life to live. I stayed until March 1st. I know that sounds really crazy. Maybe part of me kept holding out hope that as continue going to therapy, the light would go on. But every time we got into therapy, it became more insane. And it was right after the therapy session. My ex, I went on to work. We'd meet a therapist in the morning. He called me that day and said, I'd like to talk to you tonight. I think we need to discuss some things. I said, okay. And I always hated hearing that because I knew it was a bash getting ready to happen. I go home that night, and he says, what do you want to do? And I don't know. Something in me snapped, and I very calmly said, I want out. I don't want to be here. And it was very calm. I was very rational. And he says, well, what is your plans? I said, well, I'll go stay with my mom for a while. And he said, okay. We went to bed in 2 separate rooms. And the next morning, I get up. I start packing some stuff. You can hear me in the other room crying, which I don't know if it was real or not. And I continue packing. Well, I went and sat in the living room, waiting for him to leave so I could finish. And he walks by and gives me a kiss and said, "I'll see you tonight." This conversation never happened. As soon as he left, I continued packing. I took off the day of work, and I just went to my mom's. I was at my mom's for about 3 weeks. I went no contact. And that's what my therapist told me to do, no contact. During this time, my middle son starts calling me and harassing me, telling me that his father doesn't behave this way. This is not how his father is. And that I'm the crazy one, and that I needed to come home to restore our family. And I got these calls constantly from either my ex or from him at this point. And it was wearing me down, but it also was pushing me further away. It kind of, my eyes was kind of open. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just alike. They're doing the same tactics. And it got to the point where they thought they could sweet talk me and take me on trips and do these things. Well, just come on home and we'll go on this trip. I'm like, one, I'm not going on a fishing trip with you in the middle of the ocean, because one was a fishing trip, and I might not come back. These fears were real. I mean, I didn't trust either one of them. And it got to the point where my middle son started becoming as abusive, if not more abusive, than his father towards me. He would show up at my job sites where I had employees and harass them. He'd call me on the phone and call me a fucking cunt and a fucking whore. He had proof I had affairs, which there was no proof. I'm like, bring all the proof you want. I don't care. And I even said to him, I said, if this is the case, then you should be happy I'm gone. He would start stalking me on like Pinterest and things like this. I took down all my social media at this point. But I had Pinterest, and then he'd screenshot it and sent me, this is childish. And it was just silly things. And I'm like, why are you stalking me on Pinterest? Really? Come on. He started driving by. I put a camera up in my parents' home, and because he started driving by.
Was he doing this on behalf of his dad, or was he doing this on his own free will?
I think both. I think he was doing it on behalf, not that his father was telling him to do these things, but I think he thought he was doing good by his father.
And of your 3 children, where does this child, I guess, slot in? Would he be? Are they all the same type of personality, or are they all different personalities?
No, they're all very different personalities. You couldn't take 3 kids and put them in one family, and then these are completely different. I mean, they are all 3 so different.
Do they get along?
But yes and no. This one I'm talking about in particular has the same kind of relationship as his father does with his family. It's volatile, and then it's great. It's volatile, and then it's great. And he's one of these people who has to have someone to be mad at all the time to still his wrath. And right now it's me. It got to a point where he was harassing me so much, he was using his wife's phone and his phone. I blocked him. And things were fine. And he has children, and he used those children against me. You want to see your grandchildren? No, I don't think so. And I was very close with my grandchildren. He uses them as pawns. He's also, in my opinion, very abusive to his wife. And so it's just like the cycle has started all over again. But in this last November, after I had blocked him, I hadn't talked to him in probably 3-4 months. He calls me from a number that it was a recognizable number on my phone. Let me back up. By this point, I've already separated from my ex. I've gotten an attorney. I started getting me back, and standing on my own 2 feet and recovering and healing and still in therapy and, being diagnosed with PTSD. And but I'd stopped cutting. I'd quit drinking, started taking care of myself, started working out, just kind of getting back to normal who I was before all this. And in November, I get a call, and I had been waiting for a phone call from my attorney. We were making some changes in our separation agreement. So the number was familiar, and it rang. It called like 3 or 4 times. I was like, better answer this, because I got leery about picking up my phone for just anybody, because this could be my attorney's office. And I answer it, and I said, hello. He said, hey, Mom. I said, no, he said, hey, he called me by name. And I was kind of taken back by it because I didn't recognize his voice at first, believe it or not. And he said, this is your son. And I just said, what do you want? Because I know at this point what son it is. And he says, I just want you to know I'm going to kill myself, and it's going to be your fault. This is all your fault. Oh. I don't cry. I don't get immediately emotional. And stupid me stuck on the phone with him for 45 minutes. Again, you keep hoping you can rationalize with these people and talk some sense into them. And it got to the point, like, I'm not making any headway here. And I just hung up. I immediately called my attorney, because part of the agreement we were working on is, since I'm the one who left, I still had personal property in the home. And part of our agreement is one of our children, adult children, had to be there when I had the movers there to take out my personal property. And I was fine with that. I had to call my attorney immediately to tell her what had happened. And she said, you need to call the local sheriff's department, which is what I should have done. And I had him taken out of that order, that he could not be the son to be at the house with me. I did not call the sheriff's department. I actually called my oldest son, and I said, listen, I don't know how to handle this. And he says, Mom, he just called me and was all talking suicide and stuff. He says, it's the same tactic we've heard 100 times. He says, you do realize if you call the sheriff's department, they're going to show up his work, and he could lose his job. And that should have not deterred me. But I think at this point I was thinking of my grandkids and getting another job. And here they would have put him in a 72 mental health lockup. So all these things are going in my head. And I kind of got stuck back into that own mentality of, it's not that bad. This is my fault. Well, I then blocked that number. And New Year's Eve, and during all this, I have started dating. I know people think that's insane, but I have met someone who's going through a very similar situation I am, and we started as good friends, and now we are dating. But we had a wedding to go on New Year's Eve, and I wasn't feeling great. So by 7:30 on New Year's Eve, after coming back from this wedding, I'm asleep. Apparently, I had all these texts come through, and it's, hey, beautiful, are you mad at me? Are you ignoring me? Please answer me. And I have a lot of clients who text me, so I'm trying not to be rude. I have someone who will say, hey, beautiful, or whatever. I just didn't, something still felt very odd about it. And I just said, who is this? And then this person answered, this is so-and-so from the bar the other night. And I'm like, I don't go to bars anymore. So I was a little intrigued. I thought, I'm getting set up. And this person on the other end says, how are your grandchildren? And I said, hi, who is this again? And they said, oh, I must have the wrong number. I was like, I don't think so. Who is this? And, again, this is so-and-so from the bar the other night. We stepped out and had a cigarette. And I'm like, well, I quit smoking, so I don't think so. And after pushing for more information, they finally said I was at one bar. It's more of a restaurant. And I hadn't been in this place in a year. So I knew right there, this is not possible. And I just nicely said, please never contact me again. At this point, I did not know who it was. Right after that, and I had to tell this person twice to leave me alone. Right after that, he exposes who it is. It's my son. And he tells me, yeah, this is your son, you fucking loser. How could you do this to our father and our family? But I still love you. So, of course, it triggered me in a horrible way. And this is now fallen over to New Year's Day. And everything's closed. I mean, I could have went to the sheriff's department and done all this, but I wanted to sit on it. I contacted my attorney, and she said, this is harassment. This is stalking. You've done everything you can to prevent this. And he's not going to stop. He's showed up at your work. He's driven by your house. I've had to move into an apartment that I have security. You have to have a fob to get into it. There's cameras all over the place. I went and bought another car so they didn't know what I was driving. I mean, I'm taking extreme measures to hide myself. And I had to go to the courthouse on the 2nd and pull a restraining order on him, which was not an easy thing to do, especially when it's your child. So I had the restrainer pulled. We had to go to court, and, we're in the courtroom, and he, was trying to make deals because they also took his weapons. He's a hunter, so they took all his weapons because it's a restraining order. You can't have guns. So, he's trying to make a deal that he'd leave me alone, but he'd take his, as long as he could have his guns. And I just looked at my attorney and said, no, he's done this to other people, and he's actually taking guns down to kill other people. Backed out of it. I don't know if it's, this is just really insane. No. So, of course, I have to get in there and testify on my behalf. He does not have an attorney. They gave him an opportunity to have an attorney. He thinks he's smarter than everyone in there. I'm producing all my evidence from the call, the text, witnesses in there who validate that he's shown up at job sites, that he's done all these things, he's driven by, and he drags my youngest son in. So now my youngest son has become, I wouldn't say a flying monkey like he has, but he's gotten enveloped in it. And I'll get to my youngest son, he's not harassing me, but he doesn't realize he's being manipulated to where the middle one is saying that, oh, I'm the victim, Mom did this to me, even though I had probably 20 things of evidence, and he had one, and the one piece of evidence he produced in court actually worked in my favor. My attorney jumped up in the middle of court and said, I want this in evidence, and it was the evidence he presented. But, even on the witness stand, I'm distraught, I'm upset, this is very upsetting. I'm breaking out in hives. My attorney has to stop the proceeding to show the judge I'm so upset I'm covered in hives. I'm having an asthma attack, and it was just unbelievable. But looking back, that is the response I had throughout the years. But being away from it for a long time, it becomes odd. And the judge read everything. The name calling. I had to go through everything. Calling me the cunt and the whore. Everything from the beginning. And she grants me my restraining order. We get all the papers in and I leave before he can. And within days, my ex has started contacting me. And now he's trying to date me. He don't want to live together, but he wants to date me. And I'm like, this is just the most absurd thing. We are 3 weeks from our divorce, and now you want to start dating me. It isn't going to happen. I'm in the most healthy place of my life. Like I said, I don't drink. I won't say at all because that's not true. But the drinking has gotten down to a bare minimum. I've quit cutting myself. During all this, from the stress of it, I was losing hair, like gobs of hair. My hair is getting thicker. My business is succeeding. But it took a lot of therapy. And I think the one biggest thing that has brought me to where I am today is I'm not religious, but I am spiritual, and I started praying a lot. And I quit praying to fix them. I started praying to fix me, to let the anger go, to make me grow as a human being and not ever take the blinders off of me. So when I see this behavior, I know it's wrong. And I'm going to say within 12 hours, this big release just came off of me. And I started smiling again. People started noticing that I have a genuine smile on my face again. I'm at ease. I'm not as hypervigilant. Not saying that I can't be triggered, because I can. But it's been a long process, and I'm nowhere near where I need to be, but I am starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Did your therapist see a lot of codependent behaviors? with what was happening? And so what kind of things did your therapist have you work on?
We've kind of done different things because I've had to go in there, not with just the codependency, but the OCD and the racing thoughts and all that. So we've kind of hit things in different directions. And I think the codependency was more on my part, and I saw it. And because I was going to therapy, I just realized this, and he just smiled and says, there it is. But for me, the codependence was how I had to stop it was I had to just go no contact. I had to quit letting these people make me feel I had to be responsible for their feelings and their actions. I am not responsible for any of their feelings or their actions. And I had to learn not to let them get me to a point where I'm responding. Let me back up. Reacting. I can respond,
because it sounds like it's, especially with your son earlier, and you were reacting to something your ex was doing, and he uses that as proof to your children of kind of what is going on, which then makes them question who you are. And obviously one of your children, specifically the middle one, believes all of that. So are you officially divorced yet, or no?
I will be officially divorced in 3 weeks.
Okay, so I had no idea.
Bringing the reels of this,
I had no idea when we got on the phone that this has not officially happened. So 30 years of marriage in 3 weeks is about to end, and so in one way you won't have to deal with your husband in a strange way anymore because yes, you do have children with him, but your middle child, you'll still have to, you have a grieving process to do. This is 30 years of your life. You have a brand new life, but there's still a child involved. Have you discussed with your therapist about how you grieve a child who is still alive, but is lost in a way, and that there's a big possibility that you will never get that child back and it's nothing that you can do. It's nothing that was your fault in any way, but it's just, your child has the same issues as his dad, and there's nothing you can do about it. So how are you dealing mentally with that?
That's actually been probably the hardest part of it, because with that, I don't just lose my son, I'm losing my grandchildren. I have to look at it as a sense, I will always love my son. He's my flesh and blood. I want to love him. And I don't, some people are like, you must act like he's dead. No, I don't act like he's dead. I love him, but he's toxic to me. And I can continue to love him from afar. I don't have to have the relationship with him. And there are times where I still tear up and think about when he was a little boy and, all that. But I guess, though, you do kind of grieve like you've lost your son to death, because you do realize they're never going to change. And he looks at women like, I'm trying to find a good word. He's very misogynistic. He really looks down at women. And
he looks at them like possessions. He looks at women like they're possessions.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Much like his father does. So his father said, I put you on a pedestal. I'm like, I don't want to be on a pedestal. And I realized this was love bombing, even though I kind of saw through it. And my son does the same things. And I had to realize that my mental health isn't worth even my children sometimes. I know that's really hard to say, but they're adults. And if he's killing me emotionally, I'm no good. I'm not going to be a slave to him and be treated this way. But yes, you do grieve, and it's not an easy road at all. I grieve more for my son than I do my ex. Absolutely. So there's no right or wrong way of doing it, I guess. My therapist will say, just take every day as it comes, and realize where you are right now. Don't allow them to get a reaction out of you. And eventually, this will help me, and it has. But I can't give you a straightforward answer because it's so tangled.
So before we end off our show, what kind of advice or what do you have to say to everyone who is in your situation?
Get out. Like I said, I did this for 30 years, and no one should be treated this way. Men, women, children, anybody. And if given my circumstances, I stayed with this man and I allowed my children to see his behavior for years. And it's not healthy for your children. It's not healthy for you. And there's a good chance that these children could turn out to be just like your abuser. I have one. And you think, well, it's not going to affect me. Yes, it is. And there is part of a guilt there that I should have left years ago. But yeah, you have to take care of you first. If you are not the best person you can be and these people are bringing you down, it's okay to be a little selfish and take care of yourself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of your family or raise your children to be healthy.
Well, I just want to thank you, Layza, for being on the show today and sharing your story. And I know there's a lot of people out there who will learn a lot from your experience, bringing something to the show that we haven't heard before. We haven't heard anything like this with an adult child after being raised. And so it's pretty unique. And I know this is going to help a lot of people out there who are dealing with this and don't know what to do and have an experience. And you've handled it in a really thoughtful and I'm not going to use the word interesting, a very thoughtful and understanding way with care and still love in your heart, which I'm sure is very difficult for a lot of people. So I just want to thank you for being part of our show. And for everyone out there who is listening, I hope you all have a good night.